On Tuesday the 28th of November 2023 at 9:20 am, police officers attended a property on Exning Road to follow up on a report in relation to an incident from the night before. As the officers were outside waiting for a response to the door, they heard roughly 40 to 50 bangs from inside of the property. The officers had to wait for permission to enter the property from supervisors, and over 30 minutes later, at 9:55 am, upon entering the property, they discovered the lifeless body of a woman in her 40s. Paramedics were called in attendance, but despite their best efforts, the woman was sadly pronounced dead at the scene. Police cordons were put in place at the property as police inquiries took place. 2 men, aged 47 and 38, were arrested in connection with the incident and were taken to Martlesham Police Investigation Centre for questioning. The 47-year-old was taken to hospital beforehand though, as he appeared to have some sort of mental episode. A neighbour who lived nearby, who did not want to be named, said, "I came home yesterday morning and the whole street was just covered in police and ambulances, but 2 days prior there had been police. I knew it was something really bad with the amount of police here and the way they were not telling anyone anything. Normally they say something, but they were very hush-hush." As was standard procedure, a referral was made to the Independent Office for Police Contact, known as the IOPC, after it was established that the police had made contact at this address the day prior. The IOPC began investigating the previous police contact. The following day, the 38-year-old man was released from custody and faced no further action. However, detectives had a superintendent extension given to them to question the 47-year-old for a further 12 hours in connection to the murder inquiry. On Thursday the 30th of November, the 47-year-old man was identified as Olabunmi Abadunde, a Nigerian national and a trained civil engineer of Exning Road in Newmarket. After questioning, he was subsequently charged with murder and was remanded into custody, due to appear before Suffolk Magistrates Court later that day. The victim was identified as 41-year-old Taiwo Abadunde, a healthcare assistant nurse of Exning Road in Newmarket, and the wife of Olabunmi. A post-mortem examination took place and found that Taiwo had suffered catastrophic brain injuries. She had been beaten so hard with an object that her skull was fractured and her brain was visible. Several of her ribs were broken, consistent with her body being stamped on, while there were also injuries to her neck, suggesting that she had been strangled. On Monday the 22nd of April 2024, Olabunmi Abadunde stood trial at Ipswich Crown Court, accused for the murder of his wife, Taiwo Abadunde, at their family home. Olabunmi denied the murder and pleaded not guilty to the murder of his wife back in November 2023. On Monday the 27th of November 2023, on the night before the murder, Olabunmi was arrested after a domestic incident at their home, after Taiwo had suffered an injury to her lip. He was taken to Bury St Edmunds police station for questioning over the incident, but was later released and given bail conditions. As part of his bail conditions, he was banned from returning to the family home or from contacting his wife. However, on the morning of the incident, after finishing a night shift in Tesco, he travelled to their home and arrived shortly after 9 am, just before Taiwo arrived home from work at 9:12 am. Officers then arrived at the address at 9:20 am in order to take a statement from Taiwo in relation to the dispute from the night before. As they waited for a response to their call, they heard around 50 bangs coming from inside of the property. The prosecution suggested that these bangs were Olabunmi beating his wife with their son's skateboard in a continuous attack when she was unconscious, if not already dead from strangulation. By the time officers forced entry into the property, Taiwo was obviously dead after suffering catastrophic head and brain injuries, including a shattered skull with the brain being visible. Taiwo was murdered between the hours of 9:12 am and 9:20 am. Prosecuting, Stephen Spence said that Olabunmi was a jealous man who had accused his wife of having affairs throughout their marriage. There were also disputes over bills and money, with frequent arguments and violence from both parties. The police had been called to the property before on a number of occasions for domestic violence. He addressed the court as the defendant could be heard crying from the dock, that Olabunmi was aware of his wife's shift pattern, and CCTV showed that she had arrived back home at about 9:12 am, shortly after his arrival. A pathologist identified 3 areas of injury: one to the throat, which suggested Taiwo had been throttled, rendering her unconscious, but there were no offensive injuries. Secondly, she had broken ribs with internal hemorrhaging, likely from being stamped on. The most significant was damage to the head, with her skull damaged so badly that the brain was visible to the responding officers. Olabunmi beat his wife in the head using a skateboard so hard that the skateboard itself sustained damage. Taiwo was so badly injured that the pathologist was unable to estimate how many blows were inflicted on her. In mitigation for Olabunmi, Nneka Akadolu said the level of violence was completely out of character for her client. She said that he had been confused by the terms of his bail when he was released, and suggested that he had returned home only to retrieve a mobile phone that he had left behind. He thought he was not permitted to return home only while his wife was there, but she had returned home whilst he was still there. Nneka Akadola also said medication her client was on negatively impacted his behaviour, but no medical evidence could be provided to support this claim. The defendant was then taken to hospital as he was suffering from a mental episode, and he stated that his wife had subjected him to physical abuse for a number of years. He stated that on the day of the murder, they had got into an argument before Taiwo ran at him with a knife, saying that he grabbed a knife from her to defend himself, cutting his hand in the process. Upon his arrest, there was a cut to his hand, but officers found no knife in the vicinity of the body. The court heard Taiwo Abadunde, who only came to the UK from Nigeria in 2022, had worked as a healthcare assistant nurse at a care home in Cambridge, while her husband, who had joined her later with their 3 children, was a trained civil engineer, but was unable to find work in his profession, and had worked in Tesco and Wickes. On the 3rd day of the trial, Olabunmi appeared in the dock, where he changed his plea to guilty, after he admitted to the murder of his wife in November 2023. The jury agreed with his plea and found him guilty, with a sentencing hearing subsequently arranged to take place on Thursday the 9th of May 2024. After the verdict, Detective Inspector Dan Connick said, "This was an awful attack on a woman that has had a lasting impact on the community, and most importantly, on the victim's family. We are pleased that Taiwo's family will no longer have to go through the pain of a trial. Our thoughts remain with Taiwo's family and friends, and hope this result will bring some small comfort to them." A watchdog was investigating Suffolk Police for potential misconduct over prior contact with Taiwo Abadunde, who was beaten to death by her husband. At the time, Suffolk Police referred itself to the Independent Office for Police Conduct in line with standard procedure after previous contact with Taiwo. An IOPC spokesperson said it was investigating the previous contact between Suffolk Police and Taiwo Abadunde before her death. He said, "We are independently investigating the recent contacts that Suffolk Constabulary police officers had with Taiwo Abadunde prior to her death on November 28, 2023 in Newmarket, Suffolk. Our investigation began following a mandatory referral from Suffolk Constabulary that month and is looking at previous police contact, including the actions and decision-making of the officers involved. We have established that officers came into contact with Taiwo Abadunde on the 27th of November before she was tragically found dead at her address the next day by officers. In April 2024, we advised 2 Suffolk officers that they are under investigation for potential breaches of the police standards of professional behaviour at the level of gross misconduct. We advised another officer that they are under investigation at the level of misconduct. This does not mean disciplinary proceedings will necessarily follow. Our investigation remains ongoing." On Thursday the 9th of May 2024, Olabunmi Abadunde was handed a life sentence to serve a minimum term of 17 years for the murder of his wife, Taiwo Abadunde. Judge Martin Levitt described the killing of the 41-year-old mother of 3 as ferocious, ruthless, cold-blooded, callous, and savage. He told the court that Olabunmi had lied to officers, telling them that his wife had attempted to attack him with a knife and also attempted to beat him, but no evidence was found to substantiate these claims. He said, "The simple fact is that you strangled your wife and then you beat her to death and used one of your children's skateboards to batter her skull." Detective Inspector Dan Connick from Suffolk Police said, "I hope this sentence provides some comfort and reassurance to those most affected by the murder of Taiwo Abadunde, in particular her family and friends. Our thoughts remain with the family and all those who knew Taiwo. And that brings to a close the horrific case of Taiwo Abidunde, who was brutally taken away from her loving family and friends at the hands of her husband. Lawless Underground would wish to extend its sincere condolences to the loved ones of Taiwo Abidunde. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please consider liking the video and subscribing to Lawless Underground for more crime-related content. If you have any suggestions or requests for future videos, then please let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, and goodbye for now from Lawless Underground.